Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We've been tracking Justin Trudeau's clash with India. The situation has escalated in the last 24 hours. Indians, especially Hindus in Canada, are being threatened by Khalistanis. New Delhi has issued a travel advisory asking Indian citizens to exercise a high degree of caution while in Canada. Meanwhile, Trudeau has dialed down his tone. The opposition in Canada is demanding proof of Indian involvement in Nijjar's killing. And the international allies refuse to speak against India. But what impact will all of this have on the Indians who work and study in Canada? Tonight we'll discuss. In other news, another war has been averted, and this one is thanks to Russia. Turkish President Erdogan went to the United Nations General Assembly and he spoke about Kashmir again. Nawaz Sharif wants Pakistan to take inspiration from India. Elon Musk has got permission to implant chips in human brains. And 10% of Japan's population is more than 80 years old. Some cafes are now hiring people with dementia. We'll bring you more. The headlines first. In a historic move, India's lower house passes the Women's Reservation Bill. The lower house of Parliament, it proposes 33% reservation for women in Parliament and state assemblies. It received widespread support, with 454 lawmakers voting for it and only 2 voting against it. Prime Minister Modi invites US President Joe Biden to India's Republic Day next year. He's been invited to be the chief guest for the 26th January parade. The invite was extended when Biden and Modi met on the sidelines of the recently held G20 summit. It was Biden's first trip to India as US President. China is tightening its grip over Hong Kong. Beijing orders foreign consulates to hand over staff details, including names, home addresses and job descriptions of the employees. The consulates have 1 month to comply with this order. In recent years, Beijing has stepped up control of Hong Kong. Rwandan President Paul Kagame will run for a 4th term. Elections are due to be held next year. Kagame has been Rwanda's de facto leader since the end of the genocide in 1994. In 2017, the 65-year-old won a 3rd term with nearly 99% of the vote. Italy is probing Ryanair's market dominance. The Irish low-cost airline is accused of abusing its market position. Ryanair and Rome are already at loggerheads over a price cap on flights. Ryanair is Europe's largest airline and a market leader in Italy. Australia ends its fight against a bee-killing pest. The Varroa mite parasite kills honeybees. It was first detected in New South Wales in June last year. In the past 14 months, Canberra has spent $100 million to eradicate the pest, but failed. And New York, Florida and Texas will host the men's T20 World Cup matches. The tournament will be held in June next year. It is being co-hosted by the US and the Caribbean. England are the current T20 world champions. Day 2 of the Canada crisis, and Justin Trudeau finds himself in hot water. Yesterday, the Canadian Prime Minister toned down his remarks. He was hoping for some backup from his friends in the West, but it did not come. So Trudeau tempered his criticism of India, and even that has not helped. His problems, in fact, are compounding. The Canadian opposition is demanding proof of Indian interference. Hindus in Canada are being threatened, and India has issued a travel advisory. Let's get you the latest. Last night, Justin Trudeau was in the spotlight again, in the Canadian Parliament and in front of the press. Everyone asked the same question. If India ordered a hit on the Khalistani terrorist, where is the proof? And what was Trudeau's response? He said, we are working with our allies. Listen to this.
Over the course of the summer, we have been working closely with our intelligence agencies who are moving forward in their analysis. We wanted to make sure that we had solid grounding in understanding what was going on in analysis and indeed in facts. We wanted to make sure we were taking the time to talk with our allies, to share what we knew.
And who are these allies? They're called the Five Eyes. This is an intelligence sharing arrangement. The Five Eyes, as the name suggests, it has 5 members: Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom and the United States. Reports say Canada raised Nijjar's death with all of these people, these countries rather, all the Five Eyes. And they did this just before the G20 summit. Apparently, Trudeau wanted them to publicly condemn the killing. But it was a tough sell. The other Five Eye members took a more cautious approach. They've expressed concern, but they've refused to condemn India or the killing of Nijjar. Even Canada's neighbor and closest ally, the United States. Off the record, Canada claims that the US is helping them. Let me quote from what they've said. We are working with the US very closely. That's what Canada is saying. But Washington's version and tone is very different from Canada's. The US sees this as Canada's internal matter. They say, finish the investigation first and then we'll weigh in. And at this point, it would be unusual for America to stand with Canada. That's what the message from Washington is. In other words, the US wants to see the proof first. Canada's opposition has made the same demand. Show the proof. The main opposition leader is this man, Pierre Poilievre. And he says Trudeau has not provided any evidence. He's just given a statement. And what's his advice to Justin Trudeau? Come clean with the facts. That's what Poilievre has said. And this is Trudeau's biggest challenge now. He has made a grave allegation, but presented no evidence. So can he make the charges stick? What is the status of the investigation at this point? Here's what we know. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was killed on the 18th of June this year. He was designated a terrorist by India in the year 2020. He was a Sikh separatist campaigning for Khalistan, and this Khalistan movement has a very violent history in India. It led to the death of a sitting prime minister. The movement has been quashed in India, but its supporters are being given a free rein in Canada. They're calling for a separate state, a state to be carved out of India's Punjab. Nijjar was a prominent face of this movement. Earlier this year, he was shot outside a Gurdwara in Canada, in the province of British Columbia. Now that killing is being investigated by a local homicide investigation team. They're looking for 3 suspects in this case, and as of yesterday, they had not found them. The investigators say they want help. They want the people to track down the shooters. And that does not sound like a very solid lead. Unless Trudeau knows more than the investigators, unless Canadian intelligence is sitting on some secret information, we don't know that right now. But Trudeau's claims have acted like a dog whistle. They've put Hindus in Canada on target. A pro-Khalistan group has threatened them. This group is called Sikhs for Justice, SFJ. Again, this is a sanctioned group in India. It is said that Nijjar was working closely with this group. And they're now threatening Hindus in Canada, asking them to leave the country. Provocative videos like this one are being spread on social media. They feature this man, Gurpatwant Pannu, a member of the SFJ, Sikhs for Justice. A few days ago, he led a rally in Canada. He was inciting the crowd against the Indian leadership, making open threats. And now the same man is threatening Hindus in Canada. Has he faced any action so far? None. The Canadian Prime Minister tends to defend such Khalistani threats as freedom of expression. So don't hold your breath for action against them. Meanwhile, India is concerned about the safety of its people. New Delhi believes the security of Indians in Canada is at risk. So they've issued a travel advisory. Indian citizens in Canada have been asked to register themselves with Indian missions and to exercise high degree of caution. In fact, I have a copy of the advisory with me. This is what it says, and I'm quoting. Recently, threats have particularly targeted Indian diplomats and sections of the Indian community who oppose the anti-India agenda. Indian nationals are therefore advised to avoid traveling to regions and potential venues in Canada that have seen such incidents. Last night, Canada too changed its travel advisory for India, but it made no sweeping changes. What they did was just an update on the health section of their advisory, but New Delhi is not mincing its words. Yesterday, we told you that Justin Trudeau is playing with fire. I'm sure he's realizing it now. So things are escalating, perhaps in ways that Trudeau did not expect. Indians are being threatened in Canada. The opposition leader is asking for proof. And his allies, well, they're sitting this one out. So the Canadian Prime Minister is now changing his tone. He says he's not trying to provoke India. Listen to this.
India, the government of India, needs to take this matter with the utmost seriousness. We are doing that. We are not looking to provoke or escalate. We are simply laying out the facts as we understand them, and we want to work with the government of India to lay everything clear and to ensure that there is proper process.
No provocation, no escalation. That is Justin Trudeau's new position. I'm afraid that ship has sailed. India did not set the tone of this standoff. Trudeau did that. He stood up in his parliament. He accused India of killing the Khalistani leader. If that wasn't escalation, what is? So the fact is, Justin Trudeau chose this fight. He also chose the venue, the Parliament of Canada. Then why is he trying to downplay the whole thing now? Because he's not getting support. We told you what Canada's opposition is saying. They want Trudeau to come clean. Compare that to India's opposition. All major parties in India have rejected Canada's claim. Some have accused Justin Trudeau of defending terrorists. Same with his international allies. Canada is a very old Western partner. It is part of multiple Western alliances like NATO, the G7, Five Eyes. And normally these countries stick together. If one of them raises an allegation, the others support it. If not, they at least express solidarity. But not this time. Trudeau tried hard to get his allies on board. His game plan began even before the G20 summit. Canadian officials reached out to their US counterparts. They discussed the probe into Nijjar's murder. Trudeau himself looped in Joe Biden and Rishi Sunak, the leaders of the US and the UK. Reports say he wanted a joint statement, but the White House refused. They said, your investigation, your statement. That was setback number one. A joint statement by Western countries would have signaled intent. Trudeau tried for it, but he failed. Nonetheless, he went ahead with the allegation. Maybe he thought that Western countries would join the condemnation later. Again, he was wrong. And that was setback number two. Let me quickly take you through what Canada's allies are saying, starting with the United States of America. And I'm quoting. We are deeply concerned about the allegations referenced by Prime Minister Trudeau. It is critical that Canada's investigation proceed. We urge the Indian government to cooperate. Standard stuff, nothing out of the ordinary. Now look at the UK statement. I'm quoting their Foreign Secretary, the British Foreign Secretary. All countries should respect sovereignty. It's important that Canada's investigation runs its course and the perpetrators be brought to justice. The statement does not even mention India. It says all countries should respect sovereignty. The UK has also refused to end trade talks with India. Both countries are negotiating a free trade agreement, India and the UK, and London says that this will continue. The Australians too are not buying Trudeau's claim. Canberra says the allegations are concerning, but the investigation is still underway. Listen to this.
These are concerning reports. And I note that investigations are still underway, but obviously these are concerning reports, and as I've said, we are monitoring these developments closely with our partners and will continue to do so.
Australia's Prime Minister was equally unimpressed. That's Anthony Albanese. He hosted Prime Minister Modi in the month of May this year. Back then, he called the Indian Prime Minister the boss. A reporter asked him whether he regretted that statement, and this was his response.
Your foreign ministry says it's raised concern with the Indian government about its alleged role in the death of British Sikh activists in Canada. Have you raised those concerns personally with Mr. Modi at the G20, and do you regret calling him a boss?
Seriously? You should chill out a bit.
Couple of things to note here. All statements mention two things. One, the allegation is concerning, and two, we support the investigation. India won't be worried by that, but Canada will be. You know, these countries have fought wars together. These are countries bound by mutual defense treaties, yet they're on the fence. They're supporting Canada's investigation, but they're not supporting Canada. And there's a huge difference in the two. Supporting the investigation is diplomacy 101. It's basic courtesy. But supporting Canada is different. It would be an expression of political support, and right now the West is not doing that. The question is why? Because Justin Trudeau is asking too much of his allies. He's asking them to throw a strategic partner under the bus, the world's largest democracy, a country that has never meddled abroad. And he's doing that without giving any proof. So the ball is now in Justin Trudeau's court. He claimed that there were, quote-unquote, credible allegations against India. Now is the time to show the credible proof. Needless to say, the India-Canada relationship has hit rock bottom and the fallout won't just be diplomatic. This standoff has real-life implications for a lot of people. In fact, many of you have written to us. You've shared your concerns about the current situation, and we've also received many questions, like, how will this affect the Indian diaspora in Canada? Will getting a Canadian visa be tougher now? What will be the impact on Indian students in Canada or those who plan to study now? Should they start looking at alternatives? Honestly, it's a bit early to say. We'll have to wait for the dust to settle down. But we can tell you that some aspects of this relationship are already under strain, like visas and trade. Expect both to take a hit. Let's start with the visas. What is happening on that front? As of this evening, nothing has changed. Canada has not changed its visa rules for Indians. Neither has New Delhi ordered any restrictions. Same with student visas. So if you are in the queue for a Canadian visa, and if you meet the eligibility criteria, you should be able to get it. What about Indians who are already in Canada? Students studying in Canadian universities and Indians working there or looking for jobs in Canada. Again, if you have a valid visa, nothing changes for you. If you're a permanent resident, your status is secure. There is no cause for alarm. But all of this is as of today. Will it change in the days ahead? It depends on how far Justin Trudeau wants to take this, or how soon good sense prevails, or the Canadian opposition prevails. Either way, this has been a while in the making. This clash between India and Canada, and the impact has been evident on their people-to-people exchanges. Let me tell you about some recent trends. The visa rejection rate has shot up. It is now 50%, meaning half of the students who apply for a visa to Canada do not get it. This was last year. And we're only talking about Indian students here. 50% of them do not get it. If 100 apply to go to Canada, only 50 make it. What happens to the rest of them? A lot of them are turning to the UK, it seems. And numbers show this trend as well. Also, recently there was a major row. More than 150 Indian students were told to leave Canada. Why? Apparently they were duped. Their admission letters were said to be forged. The students were deceived by fake universities, and they discovered it only after they'd paid the money and landed in Canada. And of late, many such cases have come to light. Then there's the problem of backlogs. Let me share some more data with you. This is from the month of June this year. 700,000 Indians, 7 lakh Indians, were waiting for their papers to be processed. This included visitor as well as business visas. So this is what you have: visa backlogs, fake admissions, and high rejection rates. And all these are serious problems. They cannot be solved without collaboration. And for that, India and Canada will have to work together. In the current circumstances, that looks unlikely. Same with trade ties. Even before Trudeau's stunt in Parliament, India and Canada had called off their trade talks. New Delhi says it put the dialogue on hold. India put the dialogue on hold, and the reason was Justin Trudeau's failure to act against Khalistani terrorists.
We also were in a dialogue with Canada, which for some time we are looking at to we've given it a pause to see how we need to take it forward going forward.
Why is that, if I may ask?
There's several reasons. We need to make sure that geopolitically and economically we are all on the same page.
This is an unfortunate consequence of Justin Trudeau's vote bank politics. India and Canada have immense trade potential. In 2022, both countries traded goods worth $8 billion and bilateral trade was balanced. India and Canada exchanged goods worth $4 billion each. A trade deal would have improved these numbers. Bilateral trade would have grown by $6.5 billion, according to projections. Canada's GDP would have seen a bump to at least $3.8 billion by 2035. But now it seems unlikely. India's position is clear. Canada must act against the Khalistanis first. And Justin Trudeau won't do it because his prime ministership depends on their support. So for his personal political gains, he'll sacrifice Canada's interests. He has put billions of dollars at stake, quite literally, and I'll explain how. Canada is a major investor in the Indian stock markets. And who are these investors from Canada? Public pension funds. The Canadian pension funds. They've invested in India. They've poured some serious money into India. They have a well-diversified portfolio. It includes infrastructure companies, banks, even the renewable energy sector. And I'll tell you how much these investments are worth. CPPIB is Canada's largest pension manager. About a year ago, their investments in India were valued at $21 billion. CDPQ is another investor. It manages several public pension funds and plans, and they have almost $6 billion in India, 6 billion. Ontario Teachers' pension plan has also invested in India. How much money? About $2.2 billion. Now, what happens to all these investments? If this row escalates, they could suffer losses. And this money is not owned by some hedge fund or some angel investor. These are hard-earned life savings of Canadian workers, their future, their pension funds. Trudeau has put all of this at stake to appease Khalistanis and to stay on in power. Now to the eastern edge of Europe, where a new war seems to have been barely averted. Another war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, two former Soviet Union states. They've been at loggerheads over a region called Nagorno-Karabakh. It's technically an Azeri region, meaning it is in control of Azerbaijan, but its inhabitants are ethnic Armenians. Now yesterday, Azerbaijan launched an attack here. They called it an anti-terrorist operation. They sent in troops and supported them with artillery fire. And remember, this region is very sensitive. Nagorno-Karabakh has seen two wars in the last 30 years. And yesterday, it looked like a third was about to begin, but thankfully, it seems to have been halted. For now, a ceasefire has been declared, and this is courtesy Russia. Moscow was involved in stopping the hostilities. Here's what the Azeri Defense Ministry said while declaring the ceasefire.
An agreement was reached on the suspension of local anti-terrorist measures. It was ensured that the listed processes were carried out in coordination with the Russian peacekeeping contingent.
He said the anti-terrorist measures have been suspended, meaning they will stop the bombardment of Nagorno-Karabakh. The attacks began yesterday after 6 Azeri people were killed, allegedly by a Nagorno landmine. The victims were reportedly 4 soldiers and 2 civilians. After that, Baku launched its offensive. That's the capital of Azerbaijan, Baku. In about 24 hours, the Azeri forces wreaked havoc on Nagorno-Karabakh. Bombs rained down on the enclave. Gunfire was heard all around. Baku said it targeted only military installations. But many residential areas seem to have borne the brunt of the Azeri operation.
There are no military objects here, only residential houses. In the building, there are pensioners and handicapped people.
Azerbaijan released videos to back its claims, to show that this was just a counter-insurgency operation. They showed attacks on military outposts. And Baku claims that these were operated by 2 factions, illegally armed Armenian groups from Nagorno-Karabakh and units of the armed forces of Armenia. As part of the ceasefire, both these groups have been asked to disarm. They are to hand over all their weapons and ammunition to the Azeri forces. And have they accepted this demand? Well, one group has, the armed Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. They've accepted this. But the other group, the Armenian troops, have not. They say they were not even there. Armenia says it had no troops present in Azeri territory. And Nagorno-Karabakh is Azeri territory. It is internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan. It has some 120,000 people. Most of them are ethnic Armenians. And how did that happen? Well, both Armenia and Azerbaijan were once part of the Soviet Union, and the Soviets decided to make Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous. It was autonomous, but left within Azerbaijan. This was a way of finding a middle ground to prevent a war. But it did not help. When the Soviet Union disintegrated, a war broke out anyway. Armenia and Azerbaijan fought over this conclave. Thousands died in the first war over this. And the region declared that it was an independent country. Even today, they call themselves the Republic of Artsakh. But most of the world does not recognize it. Until 3 years back, the region maintained its de facto independence. They did it with the help of Armenian troops. But in 2020, all of it changed. Azerbaijan and Armenia fought a 6-week war. In the end, Azerbaijan prevailed. It established control over the enclave. Armenia had to withdraw its troops from the region. And the peace was brokered by Russia. It helped end that war. It also deployed some 2,000 peacekeepers in the region. This was to reassure Yerevan, Armenia, to show that Armenians in the enclave would be protected. Yesterday, when the bombing began, the Russian peacekeepers swung into action. They helped evacuate people from the most dangerous locations.
Our peacekeepers are working very actively with all sides involved in the conflict. They do everything to protect civilians. There are more than 2,000 civilians in our main base camp. More than 1,000 of them are children. I repeat, we are in very close contact with all sides of the conflict. With the respective authorities, I hope we will be able to reach a de-escalation and a peaceful solution.
It seems Moscow did help de-escalate the situation. Azerbaijan's defense ministry mentioned the Russian peacekeepers. They said they would help coordinate the terms of the ceasefire. But there's a hitch. Armenia says it was not part of these discussions.
Of course, we familiarized ourselves with the text of the ceasefire agreement between Nagorno-Karabakh and Azerbaijan, although the Republic of Armenia did not participate in any way in the formation of this text and was not party to the discussions.
That doesn't seem like a permanent solution. Unless all sides come to the table and agree on a way forward, this conflict could resume in the days ahead. Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. Some of you may have heard this phrase before. It's how Tony Stark describes himself. You may know him as Iron Man, the Marvel superhero. But do you know who was the inspiration behind the movie character? It was Elon Musk, a man whose new technological gamble sounds something out of the Avengers. His company Neuralink has gotten approval. What for? For brain implants in humans. They can now recruit patients for their first human trial. Some background here. Neuralink is a brain implant company led by Elon Musk. It wants to implant a chip into the human brain. The idea is that the users will be able to control phones, pay bills, and operate devices just with their thoughts. I know it sounds a lot like sci-fi movies, but who knows? It could soon be a reality. Our next report tells you how Musk is trying to blur the line between humans and machines.
Step 1. Drill holes in a human skull. Step 2. Put the chip implant in the brain. Step 3. Control your phone with your thoughts. No, this isn't the start of a science fiction novel. It's Elon Musk's dream project, Neuralink. It's a neurotechnology company co-founded by Musk in 2016. The goal was simple: build direct communication between the brain and computers. The idea was to supercharge human capabilities. Basically, control your devices with thoughts, treat neurological disorders like Parkinson's, and in the end, build a symbiotic relationship between humans and AI, aka Cyborg Alert. So, how will this happen? Neuralink's technology will work mainly through an implant. It's called the Link. The device is about the size of 5 coins stacked together. This will be placed inside the human brain. How? Well, via good old surgery. A surgeon will stitch it into your brain. And it's not just any surgeon. It's a robot surgeon. Then the hardware will harbor electrodes. This will record neural activity and stimulate specific regions of the brain. What happens then? Well, you may be able to use your thoughts to control the world. But before you get so far ahead, hold on a minute. The technology sounds incredulous, but the execution, not so much. Plus, there is a lot of steps involved. I mean, it's going in your brain, so you have to make sure it's safe first. Neuralink has tested its implants on monkeys and other animals, and now it's time for humans. The company has its approval to recruit human subjects, so if you want a chip in your brain, you know where to sign up. But if you're not ready for a robot surgeon to stitch 1064 wires into your brain, you're not alone. Neuralink's core idea is impressive, sending neuroelectrical activity to anything digital. That can be life-changing. You can then control almost anything, from prosthetic arms to your Tesla cars. Imagine the power your thoughts would have. But it's the viability that worries most people. Neuralink has 3 selling points: easy to implant, doesn't cause damages, and works for a long time. But to have it work in a human brain for a long time without problems is a real challenge. And despite the claims, many fear it could end up damaging blood vessels. That's what these human trials are about, to see if this is actually viable. The other problem is Musk's ultimate dream. He says in the future, Neuralink will be able to store and replay memories, almost like a pensieve from Harry Potter. But the brain is not a hard drive. Our memories are not videos. The neural signals emitted during the act of remembering are not the memories themselves. Basically, you can't upload your consciousness. I know, Musk makes it sound easy, but neuroscientists are on the fence about this. That being said, when has viability ever stopped Musk? The technology may not be there, but he always makes sure the hype around it is. Neuralink is undoubtedly an ambitious venture, but it's hard not to be skeptical about it, especially when the line between science fiction and reality blurs. Neuralink could be the next big thing. Only the human trials can prove that. So until then, let's keep our feet on the ground and our brains chipless, till Neuralink proves that it's more than just another Elon Musk daydream.
To build upon that and build foundation models for the brain.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I actually got no problem with.
The United Nations General Assembly is underway in New York. It is the 78th session, and by now we know what to expect. The US will talk about inspiring the world. Russia will say the US is lying. African nations will say everyone is lying. And Turkey's president will talk about Kashmir. It's a UNGA ritual by now. President Erdogan raises Kashmir, India rejects it, and life goes on. But this time, there is more context. Erdogan had just visited India for the G20 summit. He also held talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But weeks later, he does this. Listen in.
Another development that will pave the way for peace, prosperity, and development in South Asia. It will be the establishment of a just and lasting peace in Kashmir through dialogue between India and Pakistan. Turkey will support the steps to be taken in this direction.
How has India reacted this time? So far, there is no reaction. Maybe Erdogan has been won up by Justin Trudeau. But either way, it's not acceptable. Only 2 countries talk about Kashmir at the UNGA, Pakistan and Turkey. India usually focuses on constructive things like climate action or the global south. The issue of Kashmir is considered a bilateral one. There is no place for a third country, certainly not a Pakistani ally like Turkey. Yet, Erdogan keeps doing it. Each time, India has rejected his statements. But this time, there is a key difference. Like I said, Erdogan visited India earlier this month, and he had some positive things to say. For example, on the United Nations Security Council, Erdogan said he would love to see India as a permanent member. Listen to this.
A country like India, being there on the UN Security Council, we would be proud. But as you know, the world is bigger than, larger than 5. And when we say the world is larger than 5, what we mean is that it's not only about the US, the UK, France, China and Russia.
Weeks later, we are back to square one. The question is, why does Erdogan keep doing this? In one word, politics. Turkey and Pakistan are old partners. Both countries were US allies during the Cold War, but under Erdogan, a new dimension has emerged. That of religion. Erdogan flaunts his Islamist credentials. For a while, he wanted to lead the Islamic world, and for that, he needed Pakistan. It is, after all, the only Muslim country with a nuclear bomb. Plus, Pakistan is the ideal defense market. Recession, inflation, hunger, poverty, none of that will affect Pakistan's defense market. Their people can go without food, but their army will keep buying weapons. That's what happened earlier this year. Turkey delivered around 6 or 7 Bayraktar drones to Pakistan. Total cost, around $7 billion. Fun fact, at the same time, Pakistan was asking the IMF for a $7 billion bailout. Like I said, it's the ideal market. So don't mistake Erdogan's statements for activism. He doesn't care about Muslims in Kashmir. He's only playing politics. Having said that, there is a small difference in Erdogan's position. It hasn't changed, but he seems to have diluted it. Look at his language on Kashmir. In 2019, he said Kashmiris are under blockade. In 2020, he called it a burning issue, but since then, he has dialed it down a notch. In 2021, he called for a dialogue, and last year, he called for permanent peace. So what do you think is happening here? With Erdogan, you can never know. He is one of the most unpredictable leaders around. In July this year, he agreed to back Sweden's entry into the NATO. We are now in the month of September, still no progress. Erdogan is holding this issue up. Same with India this month. First, he supported India's UNSC membership, but weeks later, he meddles in Kashmir. And before that, he also opposed the new economic corridor, the one between Europe, West Asia and India, the one they announced recently. Erdogan says there is no corridor without Turkey. So he is supporting an alternative, another corridor which runs through Iran and Turkey. And honestly, such decisions have defined Erdogan's politics. It's a nightmare for policymakers around the world. You can never be sure about his next move. All you can do is expect a betrayal. Meanwhile, Pakistan is bracing for a comeback, that of former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. It's now become a routine affair too. Sharif wins elections. He gets deposed by the army. He goes into exile and years later he comes back. I'm surprised that Pakistanis are not tired of this drama. Maybe they are, but then again, what choice do they have? Nawaz Sharif is supposed to return on the 21st of October. He's in London right now. Technically, he's a fugitive from justice. He was convicted in a corruption case. And that's Pakistan politics for you. A fugitive is preparing to be the Prime Minister. This week, he addressed his party workers online. His campaign pitch was a straight one. Sharif said, look at India and Pakistan. Look at India and look at Pakistan. India is going to the moon, while Pakistan is stuck with a begging bowl. Couldn't agree more. Listen to this.
आज हिंदुस्तान चांद पे चला गया है. G20 की मीटिंग्स वहां होती हैं. ये तो सब कुछ हमें करना चाहिए था. ये तो हमारी तकदीर में होना चाहिए था. ये तो हमारी किस्मत में होना चाहिए था कि हम ये करते. वाजपेयी साहब जब वजीर आजम बने तो $1 बिलियन हिंदुस्तान के खजाने में नहीं था, लेकिन आज उनके पास $600 बिलियन जो है ना वो कहां से आ गया है. और हम $1 बिलियन आज भी मुल्क जाके मांग रहे हैं. क्या इज्जत है हमारी आज? उनकी नजरों में भी क्या इज्जत है? चाइना से हम मांगते हैं, अरब मुल्कों से हम मांगते हैं. हमारा वजीर आज़म जाके उसको मजबूर होता है वो मांगने के लिए.
Seems like a new virus in Pakistani politics, praising India. Imran Khan used to say very similar things. He praised India's foreign policy. Even played sound bites of Foreign Minister Jaishankar at his rallies. Now, Nawaz Sharif is doing the same, and the similarities do not end there. Another feature of Imran Khan's rallies was General Bajwa, Pakistan's former army chief. He deposed both Imran Khan and Nawaz Sharif. Imran clearly hasn't forgotten that, and from the looks of it, neither has Nawaz Sharif.
4 जज बैठ के तो करोड़ों लोगों के मैंडेट वाले वजीर आज़म को चलता करते हैं. और किसकी वजह, कौन पीछे उनके? उसके पीछे जनरल बाजवा और जनरल फैज है. आलाकार कौन है? आलाकार साकिर निसार है, खोसा है, वो पनामा वाला बेंच है, इजाजुल हसन है. ये लोग एक करोड़ों अवाम के मैंडेट वाले वजीर आजम को 1 मिनट में छुट्टी करा के उसको जेलों में डालते हैं.
I guess there is agreement there. Both men are accusing Bajwa of toppling them. But what exactly is Nawaz Sharif playing at? Does he have a plan? His party says Nawaz Sharif will arrive in Pakistan next month. And what do countries do when a fugitive returns? They arrest him. Pakistani law requires Nawaz Sharif to be arrested. And yet he is returning. Do you wonder why? Will he serve the remainder of his sentence? Or will the courts give him protection? Well, right now your guess is as good as mine, but Sharif's lawyers have not even moved the courts. So if there is a plan, they're hiding it. But let's assume the comeback goes fine. What happens then? Nawaz Sharif's party wants him to lead the campaign. They want him to be Prime Minister. And do their allies agree? Their top ally is the PPP, the Pakistan People's Party, the party of the Bhutto Zardaris. Reports say they are split over Nawaz Sharif becoming the next Prime Minister. Leading this dissent is Bilawal Bhutto, the former Foreign Minister of Pakistan. Reports say Bhutto does not want Nawaz Sharif as Prime Minister. So this alliance is shaky. Not that it matters. Pakistan's elections are usually decided in the barracks, not on the ballot paper. So Sharif's return can only mean one thing. He has struck a deal with the army yet again. The election was supposed to happen in November this year, but that's been delayed. Pakistan will be redrawing its constituencies. Only then will elections be held. So sometime next year, perhaps. The whole point of this delay was to help Nawaz Sharif, to help stage his comeback. Which brings us to the most important question. What will another dose of Nawaz Sharif look like? Another stint? If you ask him, the answer is clear. This is the same man who said Pakistan should have hosted the G20, would have hosted the G20 had he been the Prime Minister. But that's all bluster. The reality is nothing will change. Nawaz Sharif is a 3-time Prime Minister. He is equally responsible for the mess that Pakistan is in. Let's be very clear about that. If Imran Khan is corrupt, so is Nawaz Sharif. If Imran Khan was helped by the army, so was Nawaz Sharif. So how should India see his return? In the past, Nawaz Sharif has made multiple overtures to India. Under him, peace talks have been held. He is also seen as someone who understands why the army should stay out of politics. But will he do something about it? I think we all know the answer. The army is Nawaz Sharif's ticket back home. It is also his ticket to stay out of jail. So this latest comeback is more of a flashback. And now let's take a look at what's going on with China's Huawei. Seems like the tech giant has been busy. Here's what the latest reports say. One of Huawei's units has begun shipping computer chips. They're shipping out computer chips. These are chips for surveillance cameras. These are advanced chips and they're apparently made in China. Do you know what that means? It means that Huawei has managed to get around American sanctions. In 2019, the US had slapped sanctions on Huawei. The company was put on a blacklist. Technology exports to them were restricted. Initially, these sanctions came as a blow. But now it seems that Huawei has moved on and made progress. The question is, how did they do it and what will the US do next? Here's a report.
Huawei, a company once synonymous with 5G, but now known in the West as a threat to national security. By 2019, Huawei had caught Washington's eye. That year, the US began cracking down on the Chinese tech giant. There was opposition to using Huawei's 5G infrastructure, warnings about the Chinese government having a way into the company's products. And then came the sanctions. The US put Huawei on a blacklist. The company would not be allowed to import some American technology that was crucial for developing and mass-producing advanced computer chips. Washington's logic was simple. It didn't want China to modernize its military or for it to expand its surveillance capabilities. So, to curb China's capabilities, its golden egg Huawei was targeted. The sanctions were initially effective. Some American allies stopped dealing with Huawei. American technology exports to the firm stopped. And there was a slowdown in Huawei's plans to dominate technology in the global south. China protested and keeps protesting the US blacklist.
I can tell you that we have always opposed the US overstretching the concept of national security and suppressing Chinese companies. Such discriminatory and unfair practices against Chinese companies undermine the principles of free trade and international economic and trade rules.
That statement was made today. The spokesperson said that after being asked about Huawei's new smartphone. Reports say the company will release a mid-range 5G smartphone soon. It already unveiled its Mate 60 phone last month. The phone's release was met with enthusiasm and pride.
I don't think sanctions from some countries will affect the development of mobile phones in China, as well as the development of some technologies. I still have great confidence in the development of China mobile phone brands.
It wouldn't have been possible to develop the new phone without advanced computer chips. So, this means Huawei has managed to overcome American sanctions. Reports say the Mate 60's chip is indigenously made. It's powered by the Kirin 9000S. Now, the Kirin series is usually designed by HiSilicon. It's a chip design unit under Huawei. But this new Kirin chip may not be from their own stable. It was reportedly developed by another blacklisted Chinese company, SMIC. That stands for Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation. It's one of China's biggest chip makers, and so an obvious choice for American sanctions. But Huawei's own unit isn't too far behind. It may not have made the Kirin 9000S, but it is producing chips for surveillance cameras. Reports say the surveillance chip shipments began earlier this year. So that means Huawei has begun mass producing at least some type of advanced chip. It has developed its own electronic design automation or EDA software. That's one of the crucial requirements to mass produce advanced chips. The software's export was restricted by the US, but now it seems Huawei has designed its own EDA software. Listen to China's foreign ministry spokesperson's message to the US.
We also want to tell the US that containment and suppression will not stop China's development. It will only strengthen China's determination and ability to stand on its own 2 feet in scientific and technological innovation.
The US doesn't believe that yet. Washington is investigating China's new chips. It wants to see if they were made using illegal means. But whatever they discover, the cat is out of the bag. China has found a way to make advanced chips now. So everyone who considers the country a security threat, and that's a long list, needs to be wary once again.
Now let's talk about the greyest nation in the world, Japan. Their population has been shrinking since the year 2007. This East Asian country is home to 124 million people. This also happens to be the oldest population in the world. About 30% of Japanese people are aged 65 or above. That's nearly 1 in 3 people. And things are going from bad to worse. Here's what the latest data says. More than 1 in 10 people in Japan are 80 years old or more. This has never happened before, and this is a worrying milestone. Earlier this year, an advisor to the Japanese Prime Minister said that at this rate, their country would disappear. So what is the government doing to fix this population crisis? How has rapid aging affected the Japanese? And how are they coping with it? Here's a report.
Japan has won a race it doesn't want to. No, this isn't a competition to become the world's biggest economy or a race to space. We're talking about aging, and Japan is the greyest nation in the world. About a third of its population is aged 65 or older. Now the country has hit another worrying milestone. For the first time ever, over 10% of the Japanese people are aged 80 or older. That's more than 1 in every 10 Japanese. How did the East Asian country age so rapidly? Mainly because of 2 reasons: long lifespans and a persistently low birth rate. Japan has one of the lowest birth rates in the world. Sure, birth rates are falling in many countries, including Japan's neighbors like China and South Korea. But the problem is acute in Japan. Japan had fewer than 800,000 babies born last year. That's a record low for the country. To give you an idea, in the 1970s, that figure crossed 2 million. So now its population is shrinking.
The population of this island has halved in 30 years. And now, about 5,000 people live here. That makes it very tough.
Last year, for the first time ever, every one of Japan's 47 prefectures posted a population drop. Contracting population has become the country's dark shadow and it looms large. It also affects most aspects of life. Rural areas are emptying out.
I don't know if there will be any children left in my village by the time I start working.
In one childless village, adults compensate for the absence with the company of life-sized handmade dolls. Japan's underworld has not escaped either. Most of the Yakuza are over 50. There are more gangsters in their 70s than in their 20s. But above all, there's a serious threat to Japan's economic vitality and the security of its social safety net. Here's how. Japan's workforce is shrinking. Many industries are short of labor. And there's a shortage of young people across the board. In fact, workers aged 65 or older make up about 13% of the national workforce.
I wasn't expecting to still be working at this age. I'm doing my best to keep up with young people.
Japan's elderly employment rate is among the highest across major economies. But this does little to relieve the burden on its government. We're talking about the country's social security spending. Japan has approved a record budget for the next fiscal year, in part thanks to its rising social security costs. For years, the government has tried to battle its population crisis. Just this year, PM Fumio Kishida said the country risks not being able to function as a society. Even though Japan still remains hesitant about accepting migrant workers, it has tried to boost the birth rate. New parents in Japan get a baby bonus. They get thousands of dollars to cover medical costs. Singles get state-sponsored dating services which are powered by artificial intelligence. Tokyo's government even subsidizes egg freezing so that women can have a better chance at pregnancy if they decide to have a baby later in life. But none of these tactics seem to have worked. They've had little success because long working hours and the growing cost of living deter people from getting married or having babies. So Japan seems to be pushing people to have babies. But that strategy might work better if they focus on removing the difficulties that discourage people from starting families. Japan's population problem is not going away anytime soon. By 2040, those aged above 65 are expected to account for about 35% of the country's population. This is a slow-rolling crisis. The question is, will the world's third biggest economy continue to shrink, or will it re-strategize to lead to a baby boom?
And now it's time for Vantage Shorts, images that tell the story. Like I mentioned earlier, the 78th UN General Assembly is underway in New York, and as always, it isn't without some drama. Israel's envoy to the UN protested against Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi walking out of the hall right after he started speaking. In South Africa, it was a moment of joy for two baby seals after beachgoers freed them from tangled fishing nets. And a deadly tornado ripped through eastern China as videos showed debris flying against a dark sky. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1973, tennis player Billie Jean King defeated former Wimbledon champion Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes. Riggs had claimed that even at the age of 55, he could defeat top women's players. King took up the challenge and defeated him in the exhibition match. The Battle of the Sexes is the most watched tennis match of all time. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
A first-of-a-kind sports show that's played on a different turf. A first-of-a-kind sports show that will always come up with a winner. Are you looking for perspectives that go beyond the scoreline? Hi, I'm Rupa Ramani, and catch a 360-degree view of the sporting world with me here on Firstpost in our special Firstpost.
India has issued